It changed the shape of warfare with a storm of lead. It can destroy the enemy from 2 kilometers or just 2 meters. It's the weapon that dominates the modern battlefield. But it's been 150 years in the making. This is the story of the machine gun. The 1st Battalion, 6th United States Marines mobilizes in the Mojave Desert. In this training exercise for the Iraq War, they plan an all-out assault on the enemy trenches. 3 specialized forms of machine gun are vital to the attack, and all arise from key breakthroughs in weapons development. First, the big guns in the rear rain down heavy caliber ammunition on the enemy. Later, the infantry will move in for the kill, armed with lighter, highly mobile automatic weapons. And if necessary, they can call down devastating machine gun fire from above. But the lethal firepower of the machine gun hides an extraordinary fact. It was originally invented to save lives. Dr. Richard Jordan Gatling was a trained physician who never practiced medicine, but devoted his life to engineering. In 1861, in the opening months of the American Civil War, Gatling was shocked by the sheer number of dead and wounded passing through his hometown in Indiana. In addition to battlefield casualties, he realized that many soldiers succumbed to disease and malnutrition. Thousands of lives could be saved simply by reducing the number of men at arms.
It occurred to me that I could invent a machine, a gun, that would by its rapidity of fire enable one man to do as much battle duty as 100.
The new machine was to take and make his name, the Gatling gun. The key feature of Gatling's invention is that it has multiple barrels, each with its own firing mechanism. A hand-operated crank rotates the barrels so that they pass under the magazine at the top of the gun. Each barrel is loaded at the 12 o'clock position. When it moves to the 1 o'clock position, a spring-loaded pin fires the bullet. Then the barrel moves to the bottom of the gun and the spent cartridge falls to the ground. The result is that while one barrel is firing, the others are simultaneously reloading, allowing for extremely rapid fire. Gatling hoped his gun could match the firepower of many rifles, drastically reducing the number of men on the battlefield. US Army field trials took place just after the Civil War. This is a modern-day reenactment. Here in Kenosha, Wisconsin, a company of 15 riflemen will compete with the Gatling gun to compare firing rates.
You ready for action? No way.
We can beat that thing. That's not a problem.
Good luck, Pat.
The rules of engagement are simple. There are 2 targets. On the right for the rifleman, on the left for the Gatling gun. Whoever achieves the most hits in 60 seconds is the winner. The riflemen are highly skilled sharpshooters, but their firing rate will be limited by the technology of the day. Jim Bullion explains.
Well, the Civil War soldiers were issued 40 rounds of paper-wrapped cartridges, kind of like this. And he would have to tear the cartridge, pour the powder down the barrel, slow you down while you're in the heat of battle. Get that bullet seated on the top, ram it, and then seat the bullet firmly down on the bottom. Take a percussion cap and put that on the cone, and then wait for the command to fire. Now, a Civil War soldier that was well trained might get off 3 rounds a minute if he was lucky, but it would be very difficult to do.
This Gatling gun is a faithful replica, built from a set of 1862 blueprints. In theory, the multiple barrels can produce a firing rate of 200 shots per minute. But Pat Koboski only has 40 shots in each magazine, so he'll have to reload during the test. Fresh ammunition will be supplied by his son and grandson, feeding the Gatling gun's voracious appetite for bullets.
I would hope to get at least 120 to 150, 60 rounds per minute. That's what I'd like to get. I think that would be enough to get this motley crew on their tails.
You have to hit something.
You gotta hit it first.
Dreaming. I'll show you a little bit how fast it goes.
Koboski mustn't overheat the gun by cranking too fast. The metal components could expand, risking a catastrophic seizure. This is a key issue for neutral observer Sergeant Bob Podesta. As a former machine gunner with the British Army's Special Forces, he knows that weapons reliability is a matter of life and death.
The gunner has got to fire the gun with care and attention. The fact that it's only a 40-round clip means that every time the gunner has to change the clip, it helps the gun to cool down, so hopefully it won't jam.
Will the Gatling gun's ingenious mechanism survive the test?
Rifleman, your target is the red target. Gatling gun, your target is the blue target. Order arms. Load. Come to the ready.
While the riflemen reload, the Gatling gun storms into the lead. But now the boot's on the other foot. The Gatling gun reloads and volley fire from the rifles brings them back into contention. The Gatling gun gets back in action, but does it have enough firepower to replace 15 men?
Cease fire on the firing line. Cease fire.
The smoke of battle clears. The only thing that matters now is the number of hits. Who will get the decision?
Yeah!
Victory for the Gatling gun. The 15 riflemen made 45 hits. But the Gatling gun made 110 hits. It could have beaten 40 rifles.
It went quite well. After we adjusted it for the windage today, it was kind of windy out there. We just settled in there and kind of eased it in there, you know.
The Gatling gun went into service and was used with some success in the Spanish-American War of 1898. But in the heat of battle, the human operator turned out to be its weakest link.
In the trials, the Gatling gun looked good, okay, but in actual battle, when the firer was firing the gun, okay, he would fire it sometimes too quickly. He gets too excited, crank the gun away so fast that the gun would jam, okay? Now a jammed gun is no good to anybody.
In its day, the Gatling gun was too unreliable for battlefield use, and it was shelved. But a new kind of machine gun was already on the way, and the basic idea is still in use today. This is the M2 machine gun, also known as the Madus. It's so reliable that this actual weapon has been in service since the 1950s. In their trench attack exercises, the US Marines use it to soften up the enemy with heavy long-range fire. Unlike its predecessor, the Gatling gun, the Mardoos requires no hand cranking. It automatically produces continuous fire with no human intervention except for a finger on the trigger. Like all modern machine guns, the Mardoos traces its origins to another ingenious inventor, the creator of the first truly automatic weapon.
Fire it all out.
Hiram Maxim was a late 19th century rival to brilliant engineers like Thomas Edison and the Wright brothers. His many inventions included a mousetrap and even an early aircraft which might have made his name and fortune if it had flown. In 1883, he patented a new, fully automatic machine gun, an invention inspired by direct personal experience. Maxim's eureka moment came while at rifle practice with friends in Savannah, Georgia. The thumping recoil was giving him painful kicks in the shoulder, and he was getting tired of doing all the reloading himself. It suddenly occurred to Maxim to use one problem to solve the other. Could the force of the recoil be used to reload the weapon automatically? Back at the drawing board, Maxim found an ingenious way to do it. The key components are the barrel and the bolt. When a cartridge is fired, both are forced backwards by the recoil. Then the barrel is pushed forwards again by a spring, flipping out the spent cartridge. Meanwhile, the bolt is pushed forwards by another spring, loading and firing the next shot. Thanks to recoil, the gun reloads and fires itself with no outside help. Now Maxim was in the machine gun business. A friend told him,
If you want to make a pile of money, invent something which will enable the Europeans to cut their throats with greater facility.
So Maxim moved to London and unleashed a sales offensive that matched brilliant engineering with flamboyant public relations. A series of high-profile publicity stunts spread news of the machine gun around the world. Power brokers from all nations were invited to fire the weapon for themselves. In the decades following 1887, Hiram Maxim sold his devastating new weapon to all the major powers. Then in 1914, Britain and France went to war with Germany. The rest of Europe and finally the United States were dragged into the conflict. This was the Great War, later known as World War I. Millions of men were mobilized. But despite the rise of the machine gun, vast infantries were still trained to attack with rifle and bayonet. Armies on both sides had the same objective: to cross the no man's land between the trenches and kill the enemy in close quarters combat. It might seem that soldiers attacking like this would be easy meat for a Maxim gun. But Bob Podesta aims to show that in battle, things are not so straightforward.
I'm looking across no man's land now, and I think the enemy's just about getting ready to attack. Strange looking enemy.
Podesta's enemy is a battalion of 250 helium balloons. Like a First World War infantry company on the attack, they're arranged in rows, with each balloon 2 meters from its neighbor. Podesta decides on the most obvious defensive tactic. He sets up his Vickers gun directly opposite the attackers, on the other side of no man's land. Podesta has a single belt of 250 bullets, one for each balloon. The question is, how many can he kill?
Enemy front! Firing now!
Podesta gets his first kills, but this is no turkey shoot. Most of the bullets are finding empty space between the balloons. Podesta must take fresh aim at each single balloon, wasting precious time as he readjusts. And in a real battle, the enemy would be advancing towards him.
What do you reckon? How many do you reckon I got?
30 to 45, no more. There's big gaps out there in them, but they're still going to be coming at us. There's loads left.
This highly trained machine gunner has hit just 37 of the 250 targets. On July the 1st, 1916, the British and their allies commenced the Battle of the Somme with an attack across no man's land involving 200,000 men. A preemptive artillery bombardment was designed to destroy the German defences. But the German machine gunners took shelter in deep bunkers, then moved rapidly into position. And by this stage of the war, they had developed highly effective machine gun tactics. Bob Podesta demonstrates why the placement of guns is a vital tactical decision. While the enemy regroups, the machine gun team moves to an alternative firing point, on the flank. The difference is immediately apparent. The balloons line up 50 deep behind each other, creating a far greater concentration of targets to hit. Now the true power of the machine gun is unleashed.
Fighting enemy! I'm opening fire!
The result is carnage. Podesta is even able to shoot several balloons with a single bullet. This time round, 250 bullets make 240 kills. When a machine gun sights the enemy from the flank, there's no escape.
You've got a much easier target because it looks as if the enemy is grouped together that much closer, and you can probably take out 10 times more of them than you would do if they were coming from the front.
In World War I, the Germans could protect a section of trench with just 2 machine guns on the flanks. Each gunner swept a predetermined arc as close as he dared to his own lines. When the enemy attacked, the gunners did not open fire straight away. They waited until the attackers entered the killing zone. The interlocking arcs of fire created an impenetrable wall of lead. The British infantry were utterly decimated by machine gun fire from the flanks. The first day of the Battle of the Somme was the greatest loss of life in British military history. All down the line, the attackers were met by a maelstrom of interlocking fire from pairs of German machine guns. 20,000 men were lost. Attacking enemy machine guns was a suicide mission, and the World War degenerated into bloody stalemate. Final machine gun casualties on all sides had been estimated at 5.5 million. In the words of historian Sir Basil Liddell Hart, statesmen found themselves puppets in the grip of Hiram Maxim, who had paralysed the power of attack. All efforts to break the defensive grip of the machine gun were in vain. The heavy machine guns of World War I were so effective that the basic design is still in use today. The US Marines M2 dates back to 1921, but the recoil of the barrel betrays even earlier roots in Hiram Maxim's invention. At 7 rounds per second, the heavy caliber bullets can penetrate brick walls. For the enemy 2 kilometers away, there's no hiding place. But this battle is no World War I stalemate. The infantry take over and move on the enemy trench. To stay mobile, the attacking Marines must coordinate, maintaining continuous fire to keep enemy heads down. To do this, they need light and portable machine guns, enabling each Marine to fire, then move. After the static trench warfare of World War I, weapons like these opened a new chapter in the story of the machine gun. As an ordnance officer in World War I, US Colonel John T. Thompson dreamed of a new weapon that could be used to infiltrate trenches and kill the enemy foot soldiers. After the war, he set out to design a lightweight, fully portable machine gun that attacking troops could fire on the move. Thompson realized that existing machine guns had too many heavy components. These would all have to go. In his new design, the only heavy moving part was the bolt. In each cycle, the bolt simply flipped out the old cartridge, while a spring-loaded magazine loaded the new one. This was the first submachine gun, less than a quarter of the weight of existing weapons like the Maxim gun. Thompson called it the trench broom, a weapon to sweep away the static warfare of the past. Everyone else called it the Tommy gun. The distinctive circular magazine, carrying up to 100 rounds, could be emptied in less than 7 seconds. But the war was over, and the US Army didn't need such a newfangled weapon. Someone else did. Gangsters. 1920s mobsters like Al Capone were quick to spot the potential of a weapon that could wipe out their enemies fast. The Tommy gun became an icon of death and destruction, the stuff of bloodthirsty newspaper stories and Hollywood movies. It was the must-have accessory for any gangster on the make, and the police were soon forced to get Tommy guns of their own. But the first ever mob hit with a Tommy gun didn't quite go to plan. Spike O'Donnell ran a major bootlegging operation on the south side of Chicago. On September the 25th, 1925, mob rival Frank McElwain set out to kill him, armed with a Tommy gun and an unknown quantity of ammunition. What happened next gave them both the shock of their lives. Hitman McElwain missed with every single shot. But bootlegger O'Donnell had seen enough. The Tommy gun was enough to make him quit the gangster business for good. So why did the hit go wrong? Former Special Forces machine gunner Bob Podesta explains.
The problem with the Thompson, is that when you fire it, especially the automatic, the weapon tends to rise, and pull away slightly to the right. The way to remedy this is by putting a little bit of body pressure against the weapon. And also I've got another little gizmo that will also help remedy that.
Later model Tommy guns were fitted with a so-called cuts compensator. Its invention might have led to a very different ending for bootlegger Spike O'Donnell. The compensator diverts some of the blast upwards, forcing the muzzle down. The Tommy gun became a highly effective close-range killer. And even if a few innocent bystanders were caught in the crossfire, a spray of bullets was just what the bad guys wanted. But the good guys wanted more precision. So Thompson gave his weapon a semi-automatic option, where it fires and reloads just once for each squeeze of the trigger. And that's how the police use a new generation of submachine guns today. This is a highly realistic training scenario for the police department's SWAT team in Palm Springs, California. Their weapon of choice is the Heckler & Koch MP5, a modern descendant of the Tommy gun that can empty its 30-round magazine in just 2.5 seconds. But that's only a last resort if officers are surrounded by armed criminals. Tonight they face a hostage scenario and an innocent woman's life is at stake. Only precisely aimed shots in semi-auto will satisfy team leader Sergeant Brian Anderson.
The reason why we shoot semi-auto instead of a fully automatic, especially when you go into a hostage situation, is that you want your rounds to count. And by sitting there and spraying rounds, you really don't know where they're going. Your primary concern is for the hostage. You always want to make sure the hostage gets out there alive, and believe it or not, we do want the suspect out alive also.
The armed suspect and his hostage are in the last building in the street. He may open fire or attempt to escape, so the SWAT team must be poised to respond with minimum risk to the hostage. On semi-automatic, officers are trained for a firing technique called the double tap. 2 shots in quick succession, requiring skillful trigger control.
One shot, yeah, it'll do damage, but 2 shots do a lot more damage. We figure that 2 shots to the chest, if he's wearing body armor and it doesn't do anything at all, then we know we have to follow up with 2 to the head. And 1 round's good, 2 rounds better, but it has to be controlled fire.
The team waits for darkness, then moves in. They have no idea which room the suspect and his hostage are in. They have no idea if he will shoot. They will have to make a split-second decision.
Police, drop the gun!
One live hostage, 1 dead suspect. But the paintballs the SWAT team are firing tonight will probably wash out. For troops on the battlefield, carefully aimed semi-automatic fire is the best way to conserve ammunition. But they also need long-range accuracy. And that's where the submachine gun reaches its limitations.
It's great for room-to-room combat and close-quarter fighting, but when it comes to long-distance shooting, it very quickly becomes inaccurate.
This is because submachine guns use small pistol cartridges, which don't contain much powder. So at long range, the bullets simply run out of steam. To find a solution, designers turned their attention from the gun to the cartridges. In 1955, the US Army demanded a new weapon as standard issue for troops in the field. Like a submachine gun, it had to be lightweight and capable of fully automatic fire. But like a rifle, it would also have to hit and penetrate a helmet at 450 meters. The new hybrid weapon would be called the assault rifle. An early contender, the M14, was effectively a World War II rifle modified for full automatic fire. Unlike the Tommy gun, it used high-power rifle ammunition, heavy 7.62mm shells packed with powder. Conventional wisdom held that this was the best way to guarantee accuracy at 450 meters. Ken Elmore is an instructor for Colt Defense and an authority on assault rifle technology. Can the M14 pass the helmet test in full automatic?
The weapon's heavy cartridge makes it move all over the place. No matter how hard you fight it, it just seems to get worse. Very rapidly out of control. Within 3 or 4 shots, you're strafing the air.
Heavy cartridge means heavy recoil.
You're only carrying around 150 rounds a man. On full auto fire, the gun is cycling at around 750 rounds per minute. The ammo's gone almost instantly, as fast as you can change the mags, with almost no hits.
With the failure of the M14, it was time for a new designer to take a seat at the drawing board. In the mid-1950s, weapons manufacturer Armalite appointed a brilliant chief engineer named Eugene Stoner. Stoner was convinced that for long-range automatic fire, both gun and cartridges would have to be completely transformed. The M14 has a bend in the stock to keep the sights at eye level. But on firing, the recoil makes the whole gun rotate around this point, causing the muzzle to rise. In his new design, Stoner straightened things out and placed the stock in line with the barrel. Now the recoil goes directly back along the line of sight and the gun stays on target. Stoner then raised the sights to bring them back to eye level. The result was the distinctive profile of one of the 20th century's iconic weapons. The M16 assault rifle. It had a truly space-age look and feel. Stoner used aluminium alloy for many vital components. The plastic handguards and buttstock gave it the nickname the Black Rifle. But the most controversial innovation was not in the rifle, it was in the cartridges. Stoner threw away the heavy 7.62mm ammunition of the M14 and replaced it with a slimline cartridge of just 5.56mm. The weight savings meant troops could carry twice as many fully loaded magazines into battle. But it seemed to a skeptical army that the tiny M16 cartridge was more suited to killing mice than men. How would the weapon perform in field trials? There's far less kick from the small cartridge. The weapon's straight profile means the recoil goes directly backwards into Ken Elmore's shoulder.
With the light cartridges, low recoil, very maneuverable, easy to support in the field.
It's far easier to keep the M16 trained on the target, even in automatic. The cartridges perforate the helmet, fulfilling the specification, although they punch much smaller holes than the M14. The M16 seemed to be the weapon of the Army's dreams. And by 1965, it was ready to be fielded in Vietnam. But at first, troops in the field were not impressed. In the tropical humidity and mud of the jungle, the M16 revealed a worrying tendency to jam. There was a false rumour that a toy company had manufactured the plastic components, and the advertising slogan, "You can tell it's Mattel," became a sarcastic new addition to Army slang. But Eugene Stoner's design was not at fault. Instead, the problem was traced to poor maintenance. Proper cleaning kits were distributed, and Army discipline did the rest.
Well, the soldiers taking care of their equipment in a combat situation is absolute priority. You clean and maintain weapons before you do anything for yourself. You don't sleep, you don't eat, you don't do anything until that weapon is clean and maintained.
Soldiers were still not convinced that the M16 would be effective in combat. Some didn't believe the slender cartridge could put a man down and keep him down. But the black rifle was soon spreading terror through the enemy ranks. The new cartridge was punching above its weight. The M16 bullet is exceptionally fast, almost 1 kilometre per second. When it strikes human tissue, the lightweight nose slows down, while the heavier base maintains momentum. The bullet tumbles end over end, creating a huge bending force which it cannot withstand.
It's fully lethal. It leaves devastating wounds, and I don't know anybody walking around who's been hit by one.
As a US Army combat veteran, Ken Elmore would trust the M16 with his life.
The M16 is by far my favorite rifle. I've carried it all over the world. I know the rifle front and back. I know every feel about it, every sound it makes. I would not trade that weapon for any other weapon around, literally.
In training, the US Marines enter the final stages of their live-fire attack on a fortified trench. Their M16s maintain rapid fire, with pinpoint accuracy to pick off individual targets. Their firepower keeps the initiative, never allowing the enemy to respond. In the First World War, a trench attack was a slow walk into a hail of defensive machine gun fire. But in the modern day, the attackers have highly mobile machine guns of their own. The enemy is destroyed, and the Marines occupy the position. They set their sights on the next trench, but their firepower is not yet exhausted. If need be, the enemy can be attacked from above by a colossal machine gun that was invented before the first aircraft. Davis-Monthan Air Force Base, near Tucson, Arizona. This is the home of the A-10 tankbuster aircraft, also known as the Warthog. It's armed with one of the most terrifying weapons in modern warfare, the GAU-8 Avenger. Major Mike Young is an A-10 pilot and combat veteran of the war in Afghanistan. The GAU-8 dominates his aircraft. He's not so much flying a plane as flying a machine gun.
It starts about right here and continues up to the muzzle at the front of the aircraft. Looking at the aircraft, it's intimidating, I think. Kind of the first thing when you see is you got the gun sticking out of the front here. And when you really think about how big the gun is in the airplane, it's a good quarter size of a third of the airplane.
With magazine and drive mechanism, the GAU-8 weighs 1.8 metric tons. 6.5 meters of barrel makes the gun accurate at 6 kilometers. The entire length has internal rifling grooves to impart a spin on the bullets, stabilizing them in flight. The gun is so massive, the nose wheel of the A-10 has to be mounted offline to make room on the central axis of the aircraft. A full load of ammunition is around 1,200 rounds, but it's so heavy, a motorized loader has to be employed by ground crew. This weapon devours ammunition, but pilots are careful to make their rounds count.
We're never going to empty the gun. We're never going to shoot for 10 seconds straight to get rid of all the bullets. We're usually shooting for around 2-second bursts on the gun to get us around a little over 100 rounds of bullets per squeeze.
Even a short burst of the GAU-8 is lethal for anyone or anything. A single round of 30mm ammunition is 29 centimeters long, weighing more than half a kilo. And the GAU-8 can fire 4,200 rounds per minute. The secret is multiple barrels. The GAU-8 owes its origins to the 19th century machine gun that started it all. It's a descendant of the Gatling gun. In 1893, Gatling himself had massively upped the firepower of his invention. The human operator had been a source of jamming when the gunner overcranked the handle in the heat of battle. Gatling's solution was to drive the barrels externally with an electric motor. He achieved a firing rate of 3,000 rounds per minute. But the motorized Gatling gun was heavy and cumbersome and never found favor until the age of jet warfare. The GAU-8 Avenger is the Gatling gun reborn. Its motor is powered directly from the aircraft hydraulics. Friendly fire incidents are a very real danger, so constant training missions are essential. At the firing range, flight control prepares for the attack. The targets are hanging parachute silk and a small collection of bullet-riddled trucks. The GAU-8 must be activated before this final firing line, just 200 meters from the targets. The pilot is expected to put 80% of his shots within a 10-meter circle. The target zones are embedded with microphones to detect vibrations and precisely locate the bullet hits. A technician can then provide instant feedback on the spread and accuracy of each burst of fire.
This will be low angle straight, right, spare target.
To aim the weapon, the pilot aligns the entire aircraft using the heads-up display, or HUD. It's a visceral experience.
Seeing the HUD shake, seeing the smoke, feeling the vibrations of the airplane, seeing the vibrations in the HUD. I mean, it kind of touches all your senses. You can smell the gunpowder. When you come home, I mean, your wife can tell you that she was able to tell that you shot the gun today because you smell like gunpowder.
In a battle situation, the effect on the enemy is devastating. Even one armor-piercing bullet on target can destroy a battle tank. But enemy troops refer to the GAU-8 as the silent gun. The victims of its supersonic ammunition never hear it coming.
If I was the enemy on the ground and I knew that A-10s were getting ready to roll in and attack me, I'd probably be pretty scared. What I'd probably hear is a little late. Because it is a sonic boom, it is a time delay associated with it. So bullets are probably going to hit me or hit close to me, and then I'm going to hear the gun firing later. I'm going to be dead and I'm not going to hear anything.
If necessary, the GAU-8 machine gun could fire all 1,200 of its rounds in just 17 seconds. This is Gatling's 19th century dream come true. A single rapid-fire weapon doing the work of a battlefield regiment of troops. The story of the machine gun has come full circle.